All right. Thanks so much, Derek. I was really excited when you approached me and asked me about doing a JUMPinar on landlording. And the first thing I thought of was I shouldn't do this on my own, because no single landlord is an expert in all things landlording. And I think what you're going to gather from this panel tonight is that we're each really, really different. We're different types of landlords. We have different skills, different personalities. And I think it's going to give you guys some understanding of how there's no one right way or best way. And we all find our ways different, go through, take different paths and reach what we feel comfortable with in our own time. So, so first of all, my name's Sheryl Sitman. I've been a landlord, I guess, for about 13 years. But I started out very differently, in a very different place than I am today, geographically and in terms of what I do with my time. I was overseas. It was 2009, and my husband just kept saying to me every day, start buying real estate. Back in 2009, that was a good thing, really good thing to do, obviously. And started buying some properties while living out of the country, and realizing that I liked it, I was good at it, and it was a very good opportunity. So we came to Philadelphia back in 2016 and started buying properties in Philadelphia. And so then you see I do Landlords Connect Philadelphia now, which also was a kind of serendipitous thing that I just started back during COVID, in order to help gather a group together and help people who were nervous about how to manage and navigate things that were going on, all the difficult, the moratorium on evictions and things like that. And the group grew, and I noticed that there are a lot of things that landlords are in need of, and wanted to help fill the gaps and provide good information and help get vetted solutions and things like that. So please, please look for the group on Facebook, Landlords Connect Philadelphia. Join, and maybe we can somehow send out the link. There's also a podcast that I've been doing, and several other resources that are available there that will really make your lives easier, save you money, and joining the group doesn't cost anything. So that's my plug for today. Sorry about that.
Sheryl, I'm gonna place the links in the chat for everybody so they can navigate to there.
Okay.
And then lastly, before you get started, I just want to say, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A tab on our Zoom toolbar, and we'll get to them towards the end of the session.
Great. Thank you. So let me turn it over to Tsilina Aybin. Am I saying your last name right? So I'm going to let her introduce herself, but she is an amazing resource for everything you want to know. She knows how to hack everything, and she's helped me with a lot of things, and is just a great landlord.
Thank you, Sheryl. My name is Tsilina. I have been a landlord since 2014, so not as long as Sheryl. And when we first started, I think everyone, our friends were buying here and there, and they were saying, oh, it's so great. So we decided to start, and very quickly fell in love with the process. I am all about landlording. I'm passionate about it. We buy, we rehab, we refurbish, rent, and repeat. And we started with the Bigger Pockets podcast, and then evolved and developed. And I think 2 years ago, I started my own property management company. My husband does a little bit of consulting, thanks to Sheryl's help. And I think my biggest thing is I love helping tenants and making sure that we place them in good units and creating good neighborhoods and making Philadelphia the city it's supposed to be. We're in an amazing city. There's so many opportunities, so much growth that can happen. So I'm all about helping and putting pieces together and making sure that everyone is happy. I probably, we always make jokes that I have a tenant advocacy program instead of the landlording program. I love renting my units. I love providing amazing houses where people can grow and love and create memories. So That's pretty much me.
Thank you, Tsilina. And it's true. Like she really does love her tenants. She's she's great. So let me turn it over to Ryan now. Ryan Jones is a landlord and has his own construction company. I can attest to his great skills because he's done some of my turnovers. And he's doing a lot of things that I would never do. So let me turn it over to him.
Yeah, Ryan Jones. So I have a little bit of a different start than everyone else. We bought our first property in 2016. It was a triplex in Norristown. It was an absolute disaster, right? I remember having like $4,000 in the bank account with mortgage payments, and it was November, so Christmas was coming up. It was a very stressful time, but we powered through it. You know, we've been doing this for about 8 years now, give or take, and we've been able to grow a bunch of rental units inside the city and outside the city. We also have a full construction company that we use for our internal turns, maintenance, and we do work for other investors as well. And then we have like a little acquisitions team. So, yeah, that's about it.
So Ryan's one of the few people I know who's like looking for squatters. Like he loves squatters.
Yes. So we do love squatters. We do squatter remediation for other landlords, and we also buy squatter properties, basically sight unseen. But if you have a squatter, or you know someone does have a squatter, we can fix your issues, or we can facilitate it. So we can purchase the property as well.
So thank you, Ryan. And now I want to turn it over to Kerry Nelson. Kerry is, I already know, quite a trooper because she's filling in for somebody at the last minute. And she is on the board of HAPCO. If you guys don't know what HAPCO is, you need to know and you need to join. I waited many years till I joined, and I shouldn't have. And it's a great resource to have. And I just want to give a plug for that because I think we're in times where it's especially important to have great advocate for small landlords. I know that Kerry is also a lawyer, and that I'm quite jealous because that seems to be an important set of skills to have when you're a landlord. So let me turn it over to Kerry and she can tell us more.
Yeah, so I'm a relatively new board member to HAPCO, but I have been a landlord for many years. And I got started doing fix and flips. I actually had through a realtor who was helping us to buy a house that was uninhabitable for my husband and myself. He connected me with a guy who can do just about any kind of rehab work. And as we worked together, he said, you know, I've always wanted to do fix and flips. And actually, he's told this to my husband. My husband said, well, that's funny. So has my wife. And he said, well, I just don't really have, you know, one of the sets of skills that's required to do that. And David said, well, you know, she doesn't have the other 29 sets of skills that it takes to do that. So that connected us, and we started doing fix and flips, usually in neighborhoods that we thought were going to come around. So we would fix it, we'd put somebody in, we'd hang on to it for a few years, and then we'd sell it. And eventually that got me to the point where a very large building came available. And I just thought, this is the perfect opportunity to take an old warehouse and do a conversion. So the first one, and technically this was my husband's purchase. He wanted it for a different purpose that was not going to make a ton of money. And I said, well, that's fine. If you turn the upper couple stories into rental units, I'll manage the rental units for you, and it'll make the whole project work, and it will get you financing and all the rest of that, which it did. So I did another one after that. And where it's worked out is I've sold off all my stuff throughout the years, except for one building that I own. And so I have this ongoing, you know, kind of family at this building, and they all know each other, they all interact. It's a great community of people. So it also is, it's a very rewarding way to be a landlord, to have all those people in kind of one place and helping each other out through their stuff in the neighborhood. And again, I also really love being a landlord. It's one of the greatest things ever.
Okay, thank you. So I think you guys can understand how we're all quite different, come from different backgrounds, different reasons for becoming a landlord, and have been on different journeys. So I want to throw out to the panel a question that that comes up often. Philadelphia is a tough place to be a landlord. I personally can attest to it in comparison to other places because I'm invested in several states, and it is the most challenging market from what I see. I mean, I'm sure there's places like New York and other big metros that tend to be, have their own issues. This morning we were all hit with a tough surprise of new assessments, for example. And so I just want to throw it out there. What are some of the challenges that you have faced in the city? Anything that you feel like you want to talk about. We don't have to talk about the assessments. It's maybe a little too fresh, but let me throw that out. How about Kerry, if you start?
I've just had a difficult time through the years in dealing with revenue and L&I. So if you're going to be a landlord, you're going to have interactions with that infrastructure that's down there at the municipal services building, and it's never worked very well. So it used to be back in the day, you could just go and show up and sit there till they paid attention to you, and sooner or later you would end up with somebody who would fix your problem. These days, that's much harder to make happen. So, I don't know. I'm kind of hopeful that, the Sheryl administration will improve that to a certain extent. But that's really the thing that's been an issue for me.
I think one of the things I think that was on her agenda that she stated publicly is streamlining all the processes in the city. And I think that some people are talking about like seeing that. I mean, maybe bringing people
Good.
back to the in-person, to the offices is part of that. But I've heard that there's until recently, I've been hearing that there's positive change. But there's a big mess to to sort out there, no doubt. So Ryan, what would you say are some of your bigger challenges?
And so I think a lot of the challenges are just knowing what to do and when, right? There's not a lot of transparency with Philadelphia. The constant changing environment in Philadelphia real estate policy. It's very difficult for newer landlords. There's tax accounts, eclipse, permits, vacancy permits, sweep violations, utility companies. Like, it can be very confusing. Not everyone talks to each other. So it's just getting responses and getting in touch with the right people always seems to be the most difficult challenge that we have. You have to be like very transparent with Philadelphia, or sorry, very proactive with Philadelphia. So we use Eclipse chats a lot and follow with inspectors and utility companies. I have a virtual assistant. Their main role is to chase people down, send emails twice a day, every day, until somebody acknowledges that you are alive. Like, the city's the first one to stop me violations, and then they'll never respond to you again. So it can just that's probably the biggest challenge, is getting some feedback, getting in touch with people, and then kind of figuring out what the requirements are for certain things.
Right. And I mean, I think that just touches on, that acknowledged need to start streamlining things. And I just want to say, at the HAPCO meeting, when I forget when it was, a couple months ago, one of the city council members there who spoke, and I think it was Richardson, could it have been? But she was adorable, because she said that she was a accidental landlord. She had inherited a property, and then she listed off all of the documents and paperwork and steps that she had to take in order to be able to rent her property. And she was laughing because she understood the absurdity of that. But once I don't want to like scare off all these new or pre-landlords, because it's not as difficult as some people are making it sound. It's one of those things where once you know it, it's like, oh, it's easy. I know how to go into Eclipse and to to get my tax account number, and to pull the rental suitability, and to take care of the lead testing and everything. For those of us who are like doing it, it actually looks easy. But to anybody who's new to this, it can be difficult. And there's help available. There's people who do it for free. There's people who do it, as consultants. You can hire a property manager, et cetera, et cetera. So Tsilina, what are your challenges?
I actually have a completely different challenge. I think initially starting out, the biggest challenge was fear. Like I was so scared to even, ask an L&I inspector a question because they'll know I don't know, and then we'll get a violation, or ask someone at the city something because then they'll know that I don't know. After that hump, right now, the biggest challenge is probably my knowledge. Rules in Philadelphia are horrible when it comes to evictions, when it comes to tenant laws, squatter laws. They don't make sense. Going to court doesn't make sense either. Landlords are viewed in a more negative way than they should be, and eviction courts. So when things are working out and when everything is great, it's amazing. And then as soon as you get into a situation, it becomes challenges. It doesn't make any sense. The rules and regulations for tenants and occupants and what you're allowed to do, what your responsibilities are as a landlord or a property owner to upkeep, they don't make sense. So when it comes to purchasing, rehabbing, getting licenses, permits, I don't have an issue. Even revenue, I have and I don't know if this happened as I got better at doing things or accidentally, but as Landlord Connect became a thing, I connected with a number of higher level individuals in the revenue department, in the tax department, at L&I, who I can just shoot an email to and say, hey, I'm having an issue with this license, or I'm having an issue with this tax account. Would you please give me some advice or put me in contact with someone? And it works out great. I actually don't have any issues. Same thing with PHA. After getting to know a few people, I have direct connection to. So I don't find that challenging. Going to court and dealing with personal relationships, and when things don't work out, there's no real mediation that is offered, or there's the judges don't actually help landlords, and that's my biggest challenge.
Okay.
Things aren't fair.
Right. And I think that's something that it's just natural for us to want things to be fair and to be just. And we see that that's not what happens. And that's in every part of life, I think. So I like, my recommendation would be don't try to be right, be smart. And yeah.
Agreed. Also, don't take it personally. I think initially I would take everything personally, and it would hurt. Where now it's kind of like, all right, part of business. Let's keep moving.
Right. I agree. So, next question that I want to ask is about finding tenants, and I think I just want to emphasize, like, a lot of the work that people put into getting into real estate is about the purchasing and running the numbers and doing the underwriting and all of that. And the reason I thought it was great that Jumpstart had decided to do something on landlording is because it doesn't get as much attention as all the other parts of investing. And then within landlording, I think that finding the right tenants is also something that people tend to neglect. Slap your listing up there and then just wait for tenants to come. I can tell you, like, I was totally shocked. I thought this must be the easiest thing in the world, that landlording is just about listing your property, putting a tenant in there, and collecting rent once a month. And every once in a while, maybe, something has to be fixed. And I'm really being honest. That's really what I thought about it in my first years. So I want to talk about if everybody can kind of give their ideas or their techniques of how they go about finding tenants for their properties. How do you market your properties? And is there anything special that you do to attract good tenants? So, Tsilina, can you start? I think this is maybe your forte.
It is. So forte and probably like kryptonite, I tend to take my time choosing a tenant. I think putting the proper tenant in the unit is the most important thing in making a profit and making it worthwhile. So I don't not that I don't care, but like my turnovers are probably a little higher than everyone else's. I tend to be a little over 45 days. I have found that, so I talk a lot. I talk to my tenants. I make sure to ask the same questions multiple times. I double check that they answer the same way. I found a few things. In the application process, requesting a copy of the last PICO PGW bill is it's a game changer. Good tenants will always have their bills paid. Like their PICO PGW bills will be at zero. Landlord references can go either way, right? Like landlords could say something positive just to get rid of a tenant that they don't want. So, and then there are times when tenants will give their friends, and it's not, you can't always tell. A lot of times you can, but I think application process is super important. Like I ask for everything. I ask for the last proof of last 3 monthly payments, rental payments. And if they're not between the first and the second, they're out of my selection process. I found that credit score doesn't matter. Tenants don't generally use credit, and they don't care. Where like I'll look at my credit and be like, all right, I need another loan because I need to balance out this. Like I need to make sure that my debt to credit, debt to income ratio is appropriate. Tenants don't seem to care, like especially if they aren't planning to buy, it's not a thing. Evictions also, I've taken a few tenants that have evictions, and they've been the best tenants, on the planet, that say, thank you for giving me the chance. I was so dumb before. So I think a lot of it is personal connection, right? Like and it comes with time, right? After interviewing hundreds of tenants and getting hundreds in and hundreds out, you kind of get a feel for who's going to be good and who's not. So I found PICO PGW bills, I found to be like the biggest indicator whether or not it's a good tenant.
So you look at their the last few bills to see if they're paid.
Just the last one, I make sure date and zero, as long as they're, and of course, like their proof of rent. I make sure it's not on the 16th or on the 18th or on the 7th. Like, no, rent is due. It's not negotiable. Rent is due on the day it's due. It's not something that can be played with. And if they're not paying their current landlord or can provide proof of rental payments, what's the point of getting them in my units?
Okay, thank you.
I think.
So Ryan, I'm gonna guess that you have a different approach.
So as far as tenant screening goes, we're very similar. I do like the PICO PGW, but so we definitely lean a little heavier on the landlord references. I think it's something that a lot of people don't do. They just like do not call the old landlord, and I think that's something that sounds mundane, but is very important, right? Evictions, income, credit score, stuff like that will come up on a background check or whatever you're doing. But a tenant that calls the maintenance line every day doesn't really come up. And I feel like we have like a checklist of questions to ask the old landlords just to make sure, because Tsilina's right. They will tell you what you want to hear to get them out of their unit sometimes. And that's what you want to kind of avoid. So we definitely do that. We check for rental payments as well, but we tend to over renovate our properties for the area they're located in. It's for a couple of reasons. It helps us find good tenants, right? When we put something up that's kind of at market rent that looks better than everything else, we have a lot more applicants. We can be a lot pickier with that. The appraisal values help us with cash outs. Putting a lot more money in on the front end reduces long-term maintenance costs, and then it helps with tenant retention. So that's what we find, that when we're running on the front end, it's easier to get high quality tenants and it's easier to keep them longer. I think a killer for a lot of landlords is turns. Your turn can range from like $4,000 to $12,000. If your monthly income is $350 net, it's $4,200 a year. So best case, if you're doing an annual turn, you're keeping up with appreciation. Worst case is that you end up selling the rental for a loss.
Completely agree with you. We also overdo rehabs.
Yeah.
Not just overdoing, but making them also resilient. Like it's good to invest in good finishes and things that are resilient. It could be tempting to buy that, $1 a square foot flooring, but it's not going to last. So When you have
So
to
I
really
have-
do it, you're going to really realize why you shouldn't have done it.
I have a thing with when we do renovations, and Ryan, I'm not sure if you guys do the same thing. I have a thing where a bathroom on the first floor is mandatory and a brand new kitchen is mandatory, and
Yeah,
that
every single
gets
time.
the best type of tenant, right? Because I look at the kitchen, who would want to live in a house with a kitchen that's falling apart? If I'm creating an amazing home, I'm gonna get likelihood of an amazing tenant is higher.
And the kitchen shows up best in the ad anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
First floor bathroom, I think, is amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
who wants to have guests and go to the second floor to use the restroom?
yeah, it's pretty weird that that's how things used to be, right?
Mhm.
So Kerry, do you have any special tips or strategies that you're using?
Well, what I've always used is I have, as it sounds like Tsilina and Ryan have had this similar experience. They've ended up having really good tenants. I've had some really spectacular tenants, and what that means is I use them as my first go-to when I have a place coming up. So I use all my current tenants, and if there's, some others that I'm still in contact with, I use those people because, and I put right on my list of requirements, which you have to have your criteria list, right? It has to be present. They have to be given it ahead of time, all that kind of stuff. And it says essentially friends and family. If you have a good reference from somebody that I'm really familiar with, then you go right to the top of the line. And I found that to be the best predictor of how somebody will be. So that to me is really super important. And then the other thing is when I follow up with both a prior landlord and I tell them, look, if your landlord doesn't know you're leaving and you don't want me to call that person, then you have to give me the immediate preceding landlord. I can live with that. But I call a landlord and I also call their employer. And I tell the person right up front, here's what I need to hear from somebody I'm reaching out to. Oh, he or she is the greatest. I've known them for such a period of time, and they are just the most awesome person. They're so responsible. They're always there when you need them, blah, blah, blah. When I get that one, then I know I have my person. And if somebody just says, yes, they've been here, working here for 3 years. Yes, they show up for, I don't care. Don't care. I'm not looking for that person. I'm looking for the person who's going to fit in really well. I have a multi-unit building. Everybody has to live together. I need to get that person who's going to fit in well with everybody else that's there.
So that just emphasizes for me how different the kinds of situations each of us are in. I personally, I don't have any multi-family. I only invest in single family properties. And something I should reveal is that I have property management. I don't manage my own properties. And the reason for that is, well, there are multiple reasons. Like I said, I'm invested in multiple states. I like to travel a lot and I spend a lot of time overseas because my kids are still overseas. And I don't see myself actually as a professional landlord as much as I see myself as a full-time investor. And for me, property management has worked really well because I look at them as like, instead of hiring somebody, whether it's a virtual assistant or if I would need, like a full-time assistant in the office, hiring property management is a great way for me to not have to pay somebody full-time, but get, like, I have a staff. I have staff that does collections. I have staff that coordinates maintenance. I have staff that deals with things in the city. With I have PHA property, Section 8. They deal with all with all of that for me. I'm not as good as what like these guys all seem to be in interpersonal stuff. Sometimes I take things too personally, whatever. So I'd rather not, like, I know my tenants and I make sure like that I'm involved. I strike this kind of hybrid kind of relationship with people. So then no one's going to just call me out of the blue or ask me to do anything specific, but sometimes, like when rent is paid late, I can say, send a nice message, and I sometimes get quicker responses than the property management. And then with that, I'll say you have to be really careful about who you pick for your property management. So, so like I said, we all have our different styles and the ways we set things up. So the next question I wanted to ask is, and Derek, if we're like short on time, just cut me off.
We're good. We'll go around maybe 10, 15 minutes until we take some questions.
Okay. So, I wanted to ask you guys, what are some of the tools, techniques, or suggestions that you would give to newer landlords that would help them to grow their portfolio smartly and profitably? And this is an important question because I assume that everybody on here either is already growing their portfolio or is, just starting out with their first one, but their intention is to grow. I don't think anybody who is serious about using real estate to either supplement their income and certainly to eventually become full-time is going to stop or can't or should stop at one or two properties. It's actually very risky to put everything you have into just one or two properties, because when you do have an eviction or you do have some kind of issue with the property, then your income is zero. What are some of the things that, or techniques and ways that you've gone in your journey to grow your portfolio? Ryan, can you start?
Yeah. So I love this question. So I'm gonna be quick. So I think first and foremost, think about maintenance when you're doing renovations. It's something that took me a very, very long time to figure out, but we don't have any light bulbs in any of our properties. We only have LEDs. We use high-end or laminate vinyl plank flooring, or we refinish hardwoods. We have solid cabinets, granite, no matter what. We tile tubs around. So we always do those things. Again, take a look at the majority of maintenance requests you're getting and then plan for them moving forward, because if they're happening at one property, they're going to happen to another property. You can kind of reduce the amount of maintenance requests you get long term by planning for it on the front end. And then be very diligent with rental increases. I know that it can be sometimes a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation, but $25 or $50 a month increase is substantial over a longer period of time. That's something that we're very, very diligent with. Don't wait on evictions is another thing that we're very diligent with. Philadelphia evictions are not fast, especially with a lot of the new policies. So the longer you wait, the more money you're going to lose. And then I just think like time and consistency are the most important. Like owning rental is a marathon. It's not a sprint. If you look over a 10-year period, the values are going to go up on properties by 50%. Rents should increase by 40%. Mortgage should be paid down by 15% over the first 10 years. And those are based on like historical averages over the last 50 years. So yeah, that's just some of the quick tips that I would give.
Okay, great. So Kerry, can you give us some of tips and things that you like to implement?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me, and again, this illustrates the difference, is I just stay on top of everything with everybody. I like to know if there's any issues going on. I want to know, do not be late in reporting a maintenance issue to me, because I will come right in and make your life beautiful again. But that's really important to me because it keeps my unit in good shape. It means I'm not going in for big, heavy repairs when that person moves out and I find some surprise. So I think it's that, and the most important thing, that I just think is my kind of North Star is, I think that being a landlord is not a property business. This is my perspective, but it's a people business. And if you are, in touch with your people and you know what's going on with your people and you're communicating all the time, before the rent is drawn, I draw rent right out of people's checking accounts. I just reach in and I take it. But I send them an email ahead of time and I say, hey, everybody, it's whatever, July, welcome to summer, blah, blah, blah. Go out in the garden, something's blooming or whatever it is. And don't forget that I'm going to take a whole bunch of money out of your account next Thursday, And it's great. It keeps everybody up to speed. If anybody's going to have an issue, they let me know that ahead of time. And I just think that, over communicating is really a good way to go for me.
That's really good tip. Thank you. And you, Tsilina?
Really good tips. I don't know, going after all these knowledgeable landlords. I say initially, right, a lot of mistakes were made because we tried to save money on rehab, on contractors. We hired people that didn't know code regulation. I say when you're starting off, do it right. Hire someone to show you how to do it. Get a good property management company. Hire someone that knows what they're doing to walk you through the first couple until you get comfortable. And then rinse and repeat.
Yeah, and it's important to emphasize that we all started with, same level of knowledge as you guys. I did things that I'm embarrassed to talk about, or I probably even shouldn't talk about, because if anybody found out, I'd get in trouble in the beginning, but I didn't. I didn't do it on purpose. I'll tell one story is that I was working with a really, really good contractor when I first started, because I had to hire someone while I was still overseas, actually. And so I wanted someone really reliable, and it cost me a lot. And I thought that being a good investor meant that I could do things cheaply. I really had that in my head, that like if I was spending too much money, it meant I wasn't figuring things out right. And then one day I was coming out of a property that I was about to buy. I got in my car, and this is actually not in Philly, this is in Bucks County, and someone knocked on my window of my car, like startled me. And then he asked me, "Hey, do you own that house?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm about to buy it." And he said, "Well, I'm rehabbing this house right across the street. Do you need a contractor?" And I was like, "Oh my God, God just sent this to me." I was worried about how much this other contractor cost. And I went in and I looked at the house, and I didn't know anything, but it looked like he knew what he was doing. And I said, "Okay, give me a bid." And he was like half the price of my trusty contractor. And I probably don't have to tell you the end of the story. You can probably guess. But yeah, I hired this guy who knocked on my car window on the street. And it wasn't a total disaster, but it was pretty bad. And it's really tempting to try to save money. And it's not, and it is possible to save money. I think it's mostly about like knowing your stuff. Okay. Like you need to know your numbers, know how much, it should cost to paint per square foot, and what kind of paint you should be using, and whether you should use this kind of paint because it'll last through several turnovers, or you should use a cheaper paint, or what, things like that. What kinds of cabinets to buy, because you don't want to have to replace cabinets after a couple of years, and know prices. It's a lot, and there's no way you can know all of this at the start. It's going to be a process. So pick the things that you feel comfortable with and learn about. And then joining groups, like being a part of Jumpstart, being a part of Landlords Connect, being a part of HAPCO. I think there's probably some other things out there, and you're going to learn. And whatever you don't know, there's almost always going to be someone that you can ask. So don't.
As long as you ask a professional, there seems to be a lot of different opinions and advices.
Yeah, ask the question, like about painting. Ask people in any group, what's the right way to paint your house, and you're going to get so many, and people get passionate about it, like it's religion. So
also people give legal advice, people give
yeah,
contracting advice without actually knowing what they're doing.
Yeah, and we see that on social media. You see that. Don't believe everything that people tell you, please. You can get yourself into trouble. Check things.
Just to echo what Tsilina said earlier and Sheryl said now, is that get a bunch of quotes and ask a million questions. Like, don't be embarrassed about asking questions, even if you think they sound dumb. They're definitely not. But just don't go with the first price that you get. I would get multiple prices from multiple people, and have a loose scope, and let them fill in the blanks for you. And then if you have 3 different scopes, you can kind of put them together and try and price it out that way. But definitely ask a ton of questions from a bunch of people.
Yeah. And that
So
just
Ryan,
one-
can I, sorry.
I have one pet peeve that comes up now that I work with so many contractors and am involved in that part of the equation. And it's very common to hear people complain about contractors and be taken advantage of. I've been, like I said before, I've been really, really taken advantage of. There's a contractor that I work with that's in jail now, not because of me, but that's where he ended up. So it's and it's a common complaint. But what I've learned is that on the other side of things, customers can be just as bad. And you don't want to be a bad client. You want to build relationships with contractors. It is so valuable. It's so valuable to be able to reach out to somebody and get something taken care of quickly and just know that you can trust them, that you don't even have to ask how much it's going to cost, because they're just going to do it for what they should be doing it for. And to know that they're using good materials and things like that. And if you just keep jumping around between contractors and always trying to find the cheapest, and to push them down on the price so that they're not making any money, it's not going to work. It's not going to end well. So just wanted to say that.
Completely agree. I was gonna jump back on to Ryan and say, initially when we were starting out, we would make appointments with contractors for bids and no one would show up, or they would show up and they would be like doing us a favor. It was such a disaster finding someone. So back to Carol, I'm so grateful to have my team. I will pay them whatever they want and then some, just so that I know I can count on them. I know their work is quality and there's no issues. So getting quotes, I think, is, at least for us, was difficult. People don't show up. People don't want to.
I'll always show up.
I can vouch for Ryan.
I know, Ryan is amazing.
So I think that was all the questions that we had prepared.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. That was excellent. Before we jump into the attendee questions, I just want to say thank you all for volunteering your time. This has been great. And this open discussion and kind of just general sharing ideas and resources is what Jumpstart's all about. So we appreciate you extending that to us. Sheryl, I can go through some of these questions that we have submitted in the Q&A. If there's any that you want to call out, just let me know. The first one is from April, and a little bit of a unique question. She says, what are the challenges of renting out a space in your home, and is the same as renting out an apartment? So do any of you have experience renting out, a room or single room occupancy, or, I'm not sure if that applies to like a duplex where you're house hacking or anything, but does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the first property I ever bought, or personal property, was an owner-occupied duplex in Brewerytown. So, the challenges are living with someone that's helping you pay your mortgage, I guess. And it can be a little bit of an awkward relationship depending on the tenant. So I think tenant screening is like very, very, very important for that, especially if you're going to be living on top of someone or vice versa. If it's more of like a house hacking situation where you're renting out a specific room in your house and it's you and your family, I think that at that point, tenant screening is just like an absolute mandatory must, right? Like that comes down to like a safety. But I love the owner-occupied duplex, owner-occupied triplex situation where you can offset a lot of your monthly expenses by renting out one of the units. Yeah, so the first one I bought took 3.5 years to renovate all by myself. It was another nightmare, but it ended up turning out very well.
Great, thanks, Ryan. And while I'm on you, Ryan, we have a couple people asking about, I'm not surprised, squatter remediation. Can people get in contact with you after the session? Can I provide your email with everybody?
Yeah, the email's fine, and then anything you need, we'll reach out.
All right, great. So we'll do a sweeping response for all those questions. We'll get in contact with Ryan. Next question here I'll bring up is from He's asking, do any of the panelists recommend, or excuse me, do any of the panelists rent to Section 8 tenants, and is their screening process the same for Section 8 versus market rate? So that's a great question, and I know a lot of our jump starters want to go that route and provide affordable housing. So Sheryl, I know you said you have some Section 8 tenants in your portfolio. Is there anything you want to add, or anybody else have any thoughts on that?
So I've had mixed experiences with PHA. I do have to say it's not a well-run organization. It's a big organization, and they are, in my experience, they're hard to interact with. You have to. I think Tsilina will have a lot to say because she's obviously really good at finding her people, and I've actually done that too. I've gone down there, even though I have property management, but obviously, like I said, I do this hybrid kind of thing, so I stay closely involved. You really have to vet your tenants. Don't assume that because they're coming through PHA that they've been vetted, or that they are being held accountable for anything additional to what a regular tenant would be held accountable for. What I was told when I first started was, oh, it's great to have Section 8 because they'll be great tenants because they want to make sure that they keep their voucher. And then I thought that sounded good. But there's nothing that would prevent them or would cause them to lose their voucher, really, as far as I can tell, other than an actual eviction. And even then, I'm not
They don't
sure
lose.
that would happen. So I'll just give you guys one example that was a big lesson for me. I had Section 8 family in a large house, and one day when they lived in the house for 4 years, I already knew the house was in terrible shape, but I just figured there's nothing I can do about it at this point. So just, let them keep living there. Well, they basically disappeared. Just by chance, I saw on the PHA portal that the house was vacant. And I figured that was a mistake because nobody told me that they were leaving. And what I learned was that it's okay for a PHA tenant after the first 2 years, the initial lease is 2 years. And after that 2-year period, they can move to a different unit. Fine, but so I said, well, don't they have to give notice? And they told me they're encouraged to give notice. So they literally disappeared on me, leaving the house in just the worst condition. 11 mattresses just piled outside the house. I mean, really crazy things. And they got another unit. I just assumed after they destroyed mine, they decided to move to another. So the lesson I learned was you have to really vet well, and you have to keep your eye on things. This is not passive income. Okay. There's nothing about it that's passive. And so you have to stay involved. And then the day-to-day with PHA could be great because it's basically guaranteed income, but it's also not. You have to abide by their rules, and sometimes the rules are not fair, as we talked about earlier, that not everything in life is fair.
I have a related question about the PHA affordability maximums that they give for the zip codes. And so we have a lot of jump starters who put on their loan applications in this zip code. They attach the affordability payment schedule that they have, and they're like, this is the rent I'm getting. And we are always like, still got to have comps. We need the rental comps and market support, and make sure that that if you don't get Section 8 tenants, or if you don't go that route, there's still market support. What has your experience been with those that payment schedule? Do you feel that it's easy to achieve the maximum amounts that are guaranteed on those, or are those kind of shooting for the stars and you'll fall on the clouds or something?
Tsilina, you have some experience with
Yeah,
that.
I do. So first, I'm going to just piggyback off of Sheryl. I have a completely different experience. I am a serial Section 8 landlord. I have amazing experience with employees there. I know the rules. I follow them. The biggest issue is their turnover process is about 45 days from the time you submit the voucher to the time they move in, and it stinks because you lose that much time. Other than that, when we talk about rent is kind of guaranteed, right? They take their income, they take 30% or 40%, it's weirdly calculated. And that's their responsibility. If they lose their job, their responsibility decreases. If they get a better job, their responsibility increases. And it's always managed by PHA. Now, Sheryl, in your situation, I can see it happening, but it wouldn't. 60 days prior, so a voucher is issued for a 60-day period. 30 days prior to the voucher being issued, the landlord receives a letter. Maybe it got lost in the mail, but it is 100% sent out all the time that your rent payments will stop in 30 days or 60 days. It depends on what the situation is. So, being surprised that someone moved out with a PHA tenant is impossible unless the address changed, you moved, you didn't check your lockbox or mail, PO box, it got lost in the mail. A lot of times things do get lost in the mail, but they do communicate. It's an automatic letter that gets sent out. In terms of amounts for rent, like rent determinations, so I can't take full credit because we did hire someone to teach us and explain to us exactly how to achieve the highest rent, but we have been able to achieve the highest rent for all of our units lately. And there is certain things that you can do, like putting one ceiling fan in, putting a garbage disposal in, making sure you have the laundry hookup. When you are accepting a tenant, their income is a big portion of how much you're going to get in rent, because Section 8 has maximums, not the rubric amounts. They have maximums per bedroom, and then it's 40% of the tenant's salary up to the maximum in the rubric amount. So if you get someone that has zero income, you're not going to reach that maximum rubric amount. So there is a way to achieve the high rents, and it is possible.
So I also want to chime in. I'm serial Section 8, right? All of our units in Montgomery County and Camden, they're all Section 8. We just kind of started in Philadelphia. So Tsilina and I will be calling you very soon.
Anytime, right?
But yeah, so we had a flip that didn't sell in 19131 that we converted into a Section 8 rental with an emergency voucher. And while we didn't get the maximum value, we came very close to it. So there's scales of excellent, good, fair, poor, I believe, and that's going to, so based on the renovation level, will definitely determine what the rent amount will be. It sounds like there's also some tips and tricks. We never put garbage disposals in. We might start doing that. But yeah,
$5 more a month.
Right. So there we
And
go.
a ceiling fan.
So yeah, but I also, we work very closely with Section 8, Montgomery County Housing Authority, Camden County Housing Authority, and we're starting to work with PHA. I think the one recommendation, and to echo what Tsilina said, is get to know people that are in the offices, right? In Montgomery County, we know every single one of the caseworkers. In Camden County or Camden City, we know every single one of the caseworkers. They know me by name. They know the people that work for me by name. They know that our units are great. They know that our tenants are happy, right? So doing that is almost as important as the renovation. Know the caseworkers, make sure that those tenants are happy. Because if the caseworker is not getting bothered by the tenant and they know that you're doing a good job, it's going to go miles for you. In Montgomery County, we talk to Patty Gibson, who works in the office, and we'll say, hey, we have this voucher in hand. What do you think about this tenant? And she will say, I don't know about that tenant. And to me, that means, okay, we'll go get another voucher, right? So it's very important to have those relationships with whatever housing authority office you're working in.
Great. Awesome. And we have one more question, and we're right up against time, so we'll have to wrap up. But this is from Lauren, and I think this would be a fun one to do, just a round robin. Everybody give their short answer. But Lauren's asking, can anyone recommend a specific software they use to help manage their rental payments, maintenance, and screening? So what's your preferred software? Behind the scenes, how are you managing your portfolio? We can start with Kerry and then move on to Tsilina.
So I have only recently started using an online lease service through HAPCO, and I'm just spacing on what the name of it is.
Easy Landlord.
Easy Landlord, thank you. But they asked me before that started to kind of walk through with them what I thought worked and what didn't work, et cetera. And now they're starting another thing, which is going to be very helpful to me. And it's a way to manage tenants' payments so that the payments come in kind of like I already have it set up, but it will be a lot cheaper. And the tenants actually have to participate in it, which I think is really good. So, I won't say that it's necessarily the least cumbersome online platform, but it gets almost everything in there. And one little plug for HAPCO, one of the important reasons to belong to HAPCO is that they have a lawyer who goes through and keeps track of all the city requirements. Because remember, you can get a landlord license from the city and they do not tell you. And I just think this is silly. What are the 3,294 things you absolutely must do, or otherwise your tenant can walk without paying the rent and, all the rest of that. But there's all those requirements out there. So Paul Cohen is actually, part of HAPCO, and he provides that service and he tries to keep everybody up to date on what the requirements are. So that to me is not exactly what you might exactly answering your question, but those are the things that are crucial for me going forward.
Great. Thank you. Tsilina, how about you?
We use Buildium. I have to say, moving to Buildium we used various different portals before. We used Cozy and then apartments.com, and then we tried to collect with Venmo and Zelly or whatever else, other portals. I have to say that our payments became on time and kind of streamlined. I want to say 20% increase of just better. So I am a big advocate of online portals. Buildium works for us. It is not cheap, but totally worth it.
Got it. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, so we have a property manager in like Montgomery County and Philadelphia. So I've experienced with Buildium, with AppFolio, with Rent Manager. So all of them have pros and cons. I think that for smaller portfolios, for smaller landlords, I agree that having an online platform where tenants can come and put in maintenance requests and pay is extremely helpful. But just shop around for what's going to be the most cost effective, especially in the beginning. Like Tsilina has, she's property manager, so she needs to have all Buildium, which makes a lot of sense. I don't know, just starting out, if that's something that you need. I think that there's plenty of software out there that you can cut costs down and still collect rent and maintenance costs. Great.
And last but not least, Sheryl, how about you?
So because I use property management, so my property managers use primarily AppFolio, although some in some other states use Buildium. I prefer as the end user, whatever I am, I prefer AppFolio. I work with a property manager who gives me full access, which is quite unique. So I can run like any report you can imagine. I have full transparency to see when there are maintenance issues and everything. And I'm actually in talks with Turbo Tenant, which is people probably have heard about it. I think it's one of the more popular products out there for small landlords, and we're in talks with them about getting a discount for everybody in our group.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been excellent. I think this is a great discussion to have on record, and we'll be able to share it out with everybody who missed it tonight. But thanks for those who participated in the Q&A. Sorry that we didn't get to all the questions. I'll be sure to share contact information for all our panelists, as well as links to join Landlords Connect. The Facebook group is great. I can't recommend it enough. And also HAPCO, and be sure to get in touch with Ryan and Tsilina. Like I said, we're going to send out all the contact information. Real quickly, I'd like to just share our upcoming events. So the next one we have in person is going to be on the 21st, and it's one of our think tank events, which are a new event series we've been hosting the past year. Cheryl's been to one, I believe, so she knows it's kind of a town hall style Q&A, open discussion, where you can submit questions beforehand, and you have an opportunity to kind of pitch your question to the group and hear from experts and fellow new developers alike. So be sure to attend. There's pizza and drinks provided by our sponsor, which this month is Living Well Homes Collective. and Berkshire Hathaway. The next JUMPinar after that is coming up September 4th. It's in person again at our office in Germantown, 4701 Germantown Ave. PGW Energy Sense rebate program is going to be discussed by somebody from PGW, Zachary Popkin, and we'll learn about some good ways developers can get breaks on their energy bills. And lastly, like I said earlier, the recording of tonight's JUMPinar is going to be available at jumpstartgermantown.com. You can head there or go to our YouTube page. Just look up Jumpstart Germantown, and you'll be able to find recordings of all our previous JUMPinars as well as this one, probably within the next couple days. And that's all I got. Any last words, Sheryl?
Just thanks so much for having us, and thanks to the great panel members. I think you guys gave some wonderful information and insights to the group, and if anybody needs to get in touch with us, please do.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sheryl. Kerry, Tsilina, Ryan, thanks, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.